Hi, my name's Ben, and I recently finished directing a short film called Mamoon for Blue Zoo Animation. The film was made in response to a brief that was set as part of Blue Zoo's Shorts program. It's a company-wide initiative that encourages us to experiment in ways that we wouldn't normally have a chance to, so we can push ourselves out of our comfort zone. This particular brief challenged us to come up with an emotional human story that could be filmed using live footage involving things like light, projections and reflections. Mamoon started life as an idea involving projecting moving images onto a series of photo frames in order to create this illusion that you're somehow watching various moments from someone's life. As the light in the photo frames got taken away, so too does their life and their livelihood. I loved the idea that these projected characters could then move onto walls around the room, and I started experimenting with the idea of projecting onto our office walls, or onto the walls of any building for that matter. It soon dawned on me that the canvas that I was going to be projecting onto would actually play a huge role in the story itself. I originally started by building miniature sets out of wood and spray painting them, but it was quite cumbersome and heavy, involved a lot of sawing, and that's when I started playing around with polystyrene. When you project light onto it, it has this amazing, strange, magical effect because it's full of these microscopic pores which allow the light to kind of refract and bounce around. Because I was then faced with this very unique combination, a mix of computer animation, lighting and physical sets, I realised I was essentially dealing with theatre stage design, and through my research I found out about this guy called Adolf Appia who was doing pioneering work in the early 1900s, and what he utilised was the power of lighting and how you can use extremely abstract shapes and light and shadow to allow the audience to fill in the blanks. And it was that philosophy that I tried to adopt throughout the production, to reduce the amount of visual information down to what was absolutely essential for the story. The aim of the original narrative was to show the two characters slowly and gradually being separated by the surface that they're being projected onto, which is the reason I used a two-projector setup. So they start together existing on the same plane of projection, but as the story evolves, they get separated and end up being projected at 90 degrees to each other, which essentially means it's impossible for them to exist in the same space. The character design needed to be simple in order to match the abstraction of the environment, and also to address the problem that a lot of these smaller details were being lost when we were projecting the images onto polystyrene. The rig itself was made to be extremely flexible in such a way that we could basically move all the limbs and the facial features around to create these strong silhouettes, which were hugely important. Once we had the character design, it was a case of basically building the sets using the modular system. I'd create the set, take a photograph from where the projector was going to be situated, and then we'd put that photograph into Maya, where we would animate the character interacting with any of the important surfaces like the floor or the walls. And once the animation was finished, we'd then project that animation back onto the set. And then it was a case of looking through the camera and seeing what angles worked most effectively, and obviously adjusting the light levels and doing any camera movements. Something that I discovered midway through production was that the best way to control the light levels on set was actually to change the light in the image being projected instead of relying on all these little stage lights I had around the room. Using this method meant I suddenly had access to this completely new technique of painting areas of light and shade onto the set, which was a very interesting way to control light levels, which I hadn't done before. One challenge thrown up by such a unique project, and by the limited space that I had available, was to try and ensure that the environments looked as big as possible, mostly by creating a gradation of light from the foreground to the background. But on a couple of shots, I had to distort the characters to create this sense of a forced perspective and create the illusion that the distance they were actually travelling was a lot further than it actually was. When it came to the soundtrack, I knew from an early stage that I really wanted to use this genre called minimal music. And one aspect that really defines that genre is this repetitive looping nature that evolves and builds over time, and that really helped to reflect the modular nature of the environments and the growing suspense of the story. We approached Selig Sound with a bunch of Steve Reich and Philip Glass records, and they really nailed it. They did a great job. Making Mamoon at times was hugely rewarding and other times extremely challenging. I kept looking out for films made by other people who were attempting something similar, simply so I could learn from them or see where they were going wrong, but the fact was I just couldn't find any. And so on the one hand, I had no idea if this would actually work, but on the other I knew that if I could get it working, then I was treading new ground, and I think that was really quite exciting. There was a lot of experimenting and many missteps along the way, but without commercial pressures that didn't matter. Basically, the shorts program gave me complete creative freedom, and without that, Mamoon wouldn't exist.